Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and today I have for you a top 5 list. In this particular instance, it's a top 5 of my favorite books of all time, and this was actually a suggestion made by a friend of mine over on Facebook, so thanks for that, Robert. And I actually really liked this idea because I do read a lot. Basically I read since my teens, and then there was a point where I stopped reading altogether. And in the last 5 or so years, I've actually, maybe 10 actually, I've started getting back into reading, and I've read everything from, classical fiction to science fiction to fantasy and stuff like that. And this isn't going to be a traditional list. What I'm basically doing here, I'm taking some creative license in that I'm not only sticking to novels and novelizations, but I'm also going to be including at least one trade paperback graphic novel. And basically, these are going to be, as with all of the lists that I have done, and there's only a few, like top 15 anime, and my favorite of the new 52 DC comics and so forth. This is going to be my list for the moment. I'm basically using factors like, memorable nostalgia feelings, and how much I love the story and so on and so forth, how it impacted me or inspired me in some way. And so basically, as I say, this is going to be a top 5 list, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Starting us off at number 5 is actually that trade paperback graphic novel, Kingdom Come, written by Mark Waid and art by Alex Ross. This is a piece that I just really love. It's so majestic and grand in scope. And to give you an idea in a nutshell of what it's about, this, I guess, takes place arguably in the not-too-distant future. A man by the name of Norman McKay is kind of questioning life. And this, of course, exists within the DC universe. Superman has basically retired himself. He's gone into exile because there are metahumans now overrunning the world, superheroes, people with powers, and the in thing is the anti-hero, the heroes who will take lives and not be, so self-sacrificing and so on and so forth. And there's a lot more to it, though. There's a lot of moral debate about, how to deal with criminals and things like that. And there's some interesting machinations going on between Bruce Wayne, Lex Luthor. It all culminates in a pretty epic battle between Superman and Captain Marvel, or as he's being renamed in the new 52 DC Comics, Shazam. And that's done very interestingly, by the way, which I don't want to give away for anyone who hasn't read it. But it's just an epic read, and the art by Alex Ross is phenomenal. I mean, you could stare at page after page and still find new little things, new little Easter eggs or references to other stuff. And there's also sort of allegory theme to the piece that plays in and out and stuff like that, which comes from basically inspired by Alex Ross's growing up and things. And it's very interesting that Norman McKay, the main character sort of going through everything here, is very much a sort of personification of Alex Ross's father. So it's just a grand opus, and I love it. Can't say enough good things about it. So moving on to number 4, If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor by Bruce Campbell. This is getting more into the traditional novel type of stuff, and this is just a really fun thing to read. It's also very eye-opening for anyone who's interested in filmmaking, whether it be the actual making a movie to, soliciting that movie out and trying to get money for it to be made, trying to sell it once it is made, and so on and so forth. This is very much a memoir of Bruce Campbell's career and his life. It basically begins looking back at his childhood. He talks about how he first met Sam Raimi, the cat who would become the big-time director, how him and a group of little friends, including Raimi, would start making these sort of home movies and want to actually do something a little more elaborate. They would start telling stories on film, how they shopped them around to colleges and so forth. And eventually this would actually grow into trying to get money together to take an actual stab at the filmmaking, thing with The Evil Dead. And of course, now, there's not too many people. I mean, you throw a rock and somebody you hit is going to know, what the Evil Dead franchise is. It's definitely a cult fandom and stuff like that even I love. And, this carries on through all three of the films, through the Hercules and Xena TV series, which he worked on, as well as Briscoe County Jr., a short-lived TV show, and there was another one I can't think of the name of. And basically, there's also a supplement at the end, depending on which copy you get, that talks about the tour that came post the release of the book. They ended up doing sort of memoirs about his touring around the country with his wife and promoting the book, and they included that in a reprint of it. So this is just, I mean, there are so many laugh-out-loud moments and so many eye-opening and awakening moments as far as, the whole being in that film industry. And I have to say, I think it's arguable that even though he does consider himself to be a B-movie actor, I think B-movie actor nowadays, where science fiction and fantasy is becoming much more mainstream than it used to be, and even comic book culture, some of it has become more mainstream, though arguably watered down. I don't think B-movie actor, in his estimation, means what it did back in the day when you actually had B-movies where you might recognize a face, but you wouldn't necessarily know the name. But not too many people are unfamiliar these days with who Bruce Campbell is, I think, anyway. But that'll actually get us moving on to number 3, which is a Star Trek Vanguard novel. This is a line of novels that has been out since 2005, and the one I've chosen for this is actually one of the most recent ones in the last year. I think it came out in 2011, called Declassified. And now, by picking this, I'm not saying this is by any means the best book of the lot. But what makes it one of the best ones, in my opinion, is because everyone who has been involved in the Vanguard project has their say in this book, basically. The whole Star Trek Vanguard thing is an offshoot of the original series. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, all of those characters on the original Enterprise. The series was filmed in the 60s and takes place in like the early 23rd century, I think. And so, a lot of adventures and stuff like that, stuff that could have been much more explored, was never picked up on because the series was canceled after 3 seasons. Well, this particular book is, as I say, an offshoot. It takes place in that time period, but in fact, it's actually its own sort of universe. That is to say, while Kirk and Spock do appear in the first novel, this is actually a sector of space that we've never explored or referenced in the original series, and it has to do with the space station Starbase 47, aka Vanguard. What basically it's about, to give you in a nutshell, this sector of space harbors the technological feats of a long since dead, seemingly alien race, and on the outset borders of this sector is, on one side, the Klingon Empire, on the other side, the Tholians, the mysterious, enigmatic, we've only seen a few times, alien sort of crystalline entities, and so for some reason, the Tholians are afraid to come into this sector of space. It's called the Taurus Reach. At least that's what Starfleet has dubbed it. And the reason for the space station to be there is for Starfleet basically to covertly try to figure out what this technology to this seemingly dead race is, because it's unlike anything we've ever encountered before. And, of course, we can't let sleeping dogs lie. If we mess around in their playpen, we'll probably wake them up. And so happens with these aliens. And I'll leave it there. But why I've chosen this particular book, as I say, is because the 2 cats who basically were at the inception, who created the Star Trek Vanguard project, David Mack and Marco Palmieri, they both have a hand in 2 of these short stories contained within this book, as well as the other, team writers of Dayton Ward and Kevin Dillmore. They also write their own respective stories. So you get 4 short stories in one novel. And they all comprise a sort of along the timeline of Vanguard. The very first story in this book is it takes place as the Vanguard station was being built. And the final story, it builds all the way up to the final story, which takes place, it's the most current in the series, in the novel series, until the next to last book would come out following it. And but that's what I really love. I love that all four of these guys who have basically put their stamp on this great concept. They're all involved. And Marco Palmieri, who's basically the overseeing editor of the entire thing, he actually gets in the nitty-gritty and writes the story himself. And it was a really good one. So because it, basically comprises all four of these writers slash editor, I love it for that. And I think if I were to go a step further, I would say that this is a nice jumping on point for anyone who isn't sure they want to invest their time in the series by my words alone. You could basically pick this one up and you have 4 short stories that'll give you a basic idea of what the whole thing is about. And it's not too spoilery, I can say, but it'll just give you the idea of how great this is. You'll find it out for yourself. If it seems too intimidating to want to pick up a soon-to-be complete 8-novel set of the entire Vanguard saga, start with this one because it's very much, I think, very welcoming to a new reader. So, but moving on from there, we have number 2 on my list, The Complete Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, I have done a previous podcast where I basically dedicated the entire thing to many facets of my Sherlockian nature, and I referenced this book in that as well. I'll probably link that as a video response to this, just in case you're curious. But essentially, this completely, includes every one of the stories written by the creator of Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle. I believe there are 52 stories in all, and that includes 4 novellas, including the very first, A Study in Scarlet, as well as one of the most popular, which is The Hound of the Baskervilles. It has The Sign of 4. I can never remember the title of the last one. And it also has all of the complete short stories. Now, I always focus on like my top 3 favorites, which are The Speckled Band, The Dancing Men, and The Copper Beeches. Whereas I've read this sort of compilation of all of the stories at least 3 times over. With those particular stories, which are my favorites, I always go back to them repeatedly. So that's definitely, if that's not worth number 2 on this list, I don't know what is. But that'll get us on to my number 1 pick, and that is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Now, let me just say, since my teens, I have been saying that The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is my all-time favorite novel, and I don't think I will ever waver from that. Same can be said for the 1960 George Pal Time Machine film. That is very much so the one that I always say is my all-time favorite film, and that is because I could always kind of relate to the time traveler. In the novel, he's known simply as the Traveler. In the film, he's actually given the name George, which is meant as an homage to H.G. Wells, Herbert George Wells, the author of the book. And what basically, I like how the movie delves a little bit further into, the motivations as to why the time traveler would create his machine. That is to say, he is very much Captain Nemo-esque. He's in a world that he's very unhappy with. Because he's a scientist and an inventor, he sees time and time again these great technological feats being used for destruction, for war, for killing mankind. And he is disdainful to this. And, man's inhumanity to man, that kind of thing. He just wants no part of it. He wants to travel somewhere else, some other place and some other time. So consumed with this, he builds a time machine, and he races off to the future, where basically he finds what looks at first appearances to be an Eden, a paradise. But in fact, we find out that these 2 offshoot subspecies, if you will, of humanity, one the Morlocks, the other the Eloi, are basically these, whereas the Morlocks are these grotesque deformations of what we are as a culture, the Eloi are sort of the antithesis of what we wish we could be, very unconcerned with, learning and intelligence and even life, the value of life. So, whereas the book kind of takes a different turn, the film gives us a definitive answer, that the time traveler goes back to this point in the future and wants to try to mold it and shape it to what he hopes the future would be, a positive, bright future. But the novel itself actually kind of leaves it ambiguous, kind of leaves us, the reader, to decide what happens next. His friends, just as they do in the movie, think he's gone off, but they're not sure where. They assume, and we never get a definitive answer in the book. As I say, it's left to you. But there is one point that is actually quite different from the movie, where the traveler does go even further into the future than we see in the film, to what could arguably be described as the end of the world, which is very sort of interesting and scary described. But that'll actually get me on to one honorable mention I want to talk about, because my Sherlockian fandom is mentioned, my Star Trek Trekkie fandom is mentioned. What about Doctor Who? Well, there is actually a Doctor Who short fiction novel I love called The Stone Rose by Jacqueline Rayner. And what you basically need to know about this going into it is that they find Mickey Smith and Jackie Tyler find a statue of Rose that is 2,000 years old in a history museum. And this leads the Doctor and Rose to travel back in time to, like, 2,000, 3,000-year-old Rome in the past, where they meet a girl from the future. And she has with her this sort of robotic thing that I don't remember the name of, but it abbreviates to the word genie. And anytime somebody wishes for something, this machine grants it. And so havoc ensues, and it's left very much to Rose to figure out how to set things right again. The Doctor is actually taken out of the story for a little bit. And there are quirky elements, romantic elements, the timey-wimey stuff that I love of Doctor Who. And it's just a really fun read. Out of all the ones I've read, and I've read probably about a dozen of these short fiction novels, it's hands down my favorite. So, but that's actually going to conclude my top 5 list of my favorite books / graphic novel of all time. And this list will probably change within a week's time, but for now I've locked it in, and that's what I'm going with. So I would very much love to hear what you guys like to read. I will entertain any ideas. Point me in the direction of something I could check out, whether it be fantasy, science, just straight fiction. Do it as a video response. Leave comments below. Anything goes, basically. So that's going to be it for me, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.